Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to know how much this costs to do a study to find out that it's not warranted. My councillor colleague Thompson doesn't believe that we should listen to what they're saying, and I completely disagree with that. We do go through this with traffic lights before. It's clear it doesn't even come close to the warrants. There's not even, no, this doesn't even come close to it. And again, the local councillor just arbitrarily decides, well, you know, I don't really care what traffic engineers say. We spend thousands and thousands of dollars on the study, and they don't listen to them. So I'm just curious to know why they don't get rid of those traffic engineers. Why don't we get rid of Mr. Welsh and his whole department? Because the councillors know more than we know, know more than they know, obviously. So I don't even know why these reports come to council. Walk a mile in their shoes. Put this report together, knowing it's going to be overruled, and see how frustrated you are. It's like you're doing all this work, preparing hours and hours of time, going out studying this intersection, and in the back of their mind they're thinking this is a complete waste of time. We're just wasting taxpayers' money doing this study because the local councillor is going to come.
Order, please.
The local councillor is just going to come and overrule it. So.
Order.
I'd like to see how much money is spent on all these reports that have come forward that don't meet the warrants, how much staff time has been put into them, and I'd like, maybe you shouldn't be a councillor then. Maybe the councillors that think they know more than the traffic engineers really shouldn't be councillors. They should apply to be the head of transportation or work as in the transportation department. Because that's, you're saying that's what you are. You're a professional. You know your constituents know better. This intersection's only been around for 30, 40, 50 years. It doesn't seem to be a problem. And all of a sudden, after 50 years, there's a problem. I don't believe that. I don't buy that. And this is just another example of more wasted money down here at City Hall.
All right, thank you. Councillor Vaughan.
Well, I don't know whether to call that a flip-flop or a slip-slop or a God knows what. So, the advice we're now being given by one councillor is that when the staff says do X, you do X. When the staff recommends a community grant, you do X. Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. No, if I disagree with staff, I do Y. In fact, if I disagree with staff policy, I do X, Y, and Z, and then I tell you I've done A, B, and C, and don't even get close to X. We had a councillor last meeting stand up on an issue on Leslie Street and say, if the people are right, the people are right. I don't care what the environmental assessment says. I don't care what the staff report says. I don't care what the world is telling me. If there's a group of people I can find that'll support me, I'll do what they say. But if I disagree with the councillor, I'll lean on staff. Which is it, Councillor Ford? Which principle are you using today?
Vaughan.
Slip-slop or flip-flop? One way or another.
Comments.
But what about Islington? Here, I'll give you an example of a street where apparently the warrants weren't met, but a child was threatened. In fact, a child was injured. And a councillor did the right thing. He didn't represent the bureaucracy to the constituents. He represented the constituents to us here at council and pleaded for relief. Islington, north of the 401. I remember a series of motions that Councillor Moscow moved about referring to the Etobicoke move to choose warrants where they suit you and ignore them where they don't and lecture us about tax dollars at other times.
Who did that?
I can't afford a councillor that is that weak on principle and that weak on consistency. I don't think the city could afford a mayor like that. I think that we would be affording ourselves an opportunity to really wallow in what is passing for populism right now, but really it's just pandering. Pandering of the worst kind. You know, the one thing I used to admire about some of the councillors around here was that right or wrong they stuck to their principles. But sometimes you stand up and run for mayor, and all of a sudden, all of a sudden things change. The skin gets a little thinner, but the thinking is still a little thick. The reality here is that a councillor has come forward with a safety concern regarding children in her neighbourhood. And the provincial legislation that frames our decision-making is not strong enough to support her community. And we can choose, because it is our prerogative to choose. In fact, it is our responsibility to make the choice, to side with some misguided provincial guideline which is not geared to the local circumstance, or we can stand behind a family and children and a community that has asked for our protection. And we can fall behind this principle that whatever the staff says is right, but I don't listen to them every other time. Or we can fall behind the principle which says the staff is never right and the community is always right, but I don't always support them. Or we can take these issues on merit, we can listen to the arguments, and we can reasoned debate and have a reasoned decision. But to pretend that there's some overarching principle here that's being adhered to, when quite clearly there's a flip, a flop, from a slip and a slop, some guy who thinks that the staff should always be listened to but never actually listens to them, some person who thinks the rules should always be followed but never really follows them, the most punished councillor in the history of this council, who cannot follow a rule if he tripped over it, and he's tripped over enough,
right,
is now suddenly saying, ignore the community. Ignore the community. That's a hell of a platform.
All right.